In today's show, we are live here on YouTube answering your questions. Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball, on TikTok at redrock_bball, and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit fanduel.com/lockedon today to get started. We're here to answer your questions. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of, this guy's got this schedule and we need this in the playoffs and this guy's injured and what do I do with this guy? Because that's what happens at this point in the season. And to answer all of those questions, I am joined by the one and the only Adam Kingy King. Kingy, hello.
Morning, mate. How are you today?
I'm pretty good. I'm ready to go and ready to get into these questions, and I hope we get some information on Kevin Durant. I don't think we will. They don't practice again until tomorrow, so I don't think we'll get any news until then on that one. But we're here to answer people's questions about their fantasy basketball teams. So let's get into it and let's just do it. All right. Shapaz says, would you drop Mark Williams for Isaiah Livers or Charles Bassey to get 2 extra games played next week in the playoffs? I'm worried about having 3 players with a 2-game schedule.
Mark Williams for Bassey to get 2 extra games. Oh, look, maybe for Bassey, probably not for Livers. Well, Detroit are a mess. Maybe for Bassey. I'd possibly, if you're getting 2 extra games. I don't know. My concern when you plan ahead that far is that teams are resting guys and injuries, all sorts of things. So on paper, you get 2 extra games, but who's to say that Bassey doesn't get injured and then you've dropped Mark Williams?
That is true. That is part of the issue with a lot of that stuff. And look, Bassey's probably a borderline 12-team league guy anyway. With 4 games next week, if he plays 4 games, he is probably a top 100-ish sort of a guy as a total value sort of situation, which only improves if he plays all 4 and other guys sit. But you're right. Maybe he doesn't play all 4. Like we don't know that. It is tough to do. But I do agree with the general part of this question saying, he's got three players with 2-game schedules. Like that's probably, you're not going to be able to win. Well, it's going to be very unlikely to win dealing with that level of game deficiency. And while we all do love Mark Williams and what he's able to do, like you have to make calls. And I think what you could hope is that your opponent picks him up and only gets 2 games out of that roster slot. Like that might be something that's a benefit for you. Of course, then you look at, then what happens the week after? But you got to get through that. And if your team you're playing's bashed up with a million injuries, then it doesn't matter if you have 2-game guys because they're going to get 0-game guys. But you need to be willing to make that call. So Livers is notoriously unfantasy friendly. Like the gap between Bassey and Livers is pretty gigantic from a fantasy perspective. So I don't know if I'd consider it for Livers. And I'm pretty sure if I look at my weekly projections for next week, Livers is behind Mark Williams, even playing 2 fewer games, which is not easy to do. But Bassey is significantly ahead. So while you're right, there is a risk that Bassey plays 3 games and they become sort of even. The balance of probabilities, you're going to have to make some moves based on that schedule. All right. AJ Negrelli. What version of Thibault will we see over the next 7 days? The lights out shooter from his arrival, or no? I'll tell you that right now. You're not going to see that. Or the more typical version that we've seen the last 4 years. How about we just go with the guy that we've seen for 4 years versus the guy we saw for 3 games? That is your default answer to any of these questions. What I do say with Thibault is this is how people react. Like I already had someone yesterday, King, he said, man, Thibault's minutes trend is really worrying. Should I drop him? Like it was 1 game. He played 37 minutes 2 games ago, and then he played 20 last game. That was not good. Playing 20 minutes was not good yesterday, but there's no trend. It was 1 game. And as I have banged on about on this podcast a million times, what he's doing offensively is completely bullshit. It's fluky. Do not rely upon it. He is still just a steals and blocks guy. And if you were getting comfortable of him scoring 15 points with 5 threes, you shouldn't have, because that's just not what he does. So again, King, I think the general answer is just like, we sort of know who this guy is.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, like that was nice. And look, I mean, he's getting a little bit more of an opportunity at least. But yesterday the Blazers were blown out. So yeah, you can look at it. It was 20 minutes. Nurk was back. I don't think that impacts him too much.
I don't think so either.
So I think he'll be closer to 30 on most nights. So if you rostered him, you should be rostering him for his steals and his blocks. And he got a steal yesterday. It wasn't a
Look, he hasn't been
game,
good.
but
He's been getting like one steal a game. That's not that good for what he does. Like, you need him to get 1.7, 1.8, 2, right? But this is the nature of steals, and I talk about this all the time, of how wildly variable they are game to game, week to week, month to month, year to year. Like, they're all over the shop. And this will just happen. It's shit that it's happening this week, and it's happening all games in a row, but it just happens. Like, we can't really do much about that. That's just the nature of that category. And it's the nature of volatility of low volume fantasy categories as well. Dr. Mario says, in a 16-team league, how many teams should make it to the playoffs? 6 or 8? Well, Kingy, I'll let you answer this one first, but I don't think should is a word. Well, it is a word, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Look, I mean, it's totally up to you how you want to set your league up. I'm in. I don't know. 8 for me just works better because I don't really like the bye.
Yep.
So I tend to go with 8 because then you go 8-4-2. You could go 6 if you do want to reward those top 2 teams with a bye, but I think in a 16-team league, probably 8.
Again, like, should doesn't really factor into it. Do whatever you want. No. Like, if you want to have 4, you want to have 4. But the pros and cons of everything is here. The pros and cons of having more teams in the playoffs, like, the pro is that the league becomes more competitive for longer as teams are fighting for those playoff spots. You have 12 playoff spots. A lot of teams are in it right until the very end. The con of that is that, you know, a 12 seed could come through and beat the team that's been the 2 seed or the 1 seed all year, and you'll tell me that it's not fair and the best team should be rewarded, blah, blah, blah. Right? That's what people will tell me. That's a con. The other side, if you have 6 teams, then 4 teams are eliminated straight away. They don't set their lineup, or not straight away, really. They don't end up setting their lineups. It skews results all over the place, and you just have less engagement in your league. But it brings the best of the best together. It gives bias to those top teams and perhaps rewards their value over the course of the season. I tend to think go deeper, get the league active for longer, a more fun environment, more battles throughout the end of the season. But it really just is a individual discussion. Like, it should be one way. Let's address the Steven Adams news that App has Trends mentions he is out for another 4 weeks, which is baffling to me. The fact that they're like, oh, no, he'll probably be back into the road trip. No, he's doing 5-on-5, and now it's like, nah, sorry, we're going to just do the injury all over again. The same thing. No idea. That's it for him. That's regular season done, basically. We're 4 weeks away from the end of the regular season. That's it for him. So he says, do you think we'll see Jaren Jackson playing center occasionally for the time being? And we get these questions a lot, Kingy. We've seen it. Like, we know what happens with no Steven Adams and no Brandon Clark. There's been 2 games of it. We know what happens. Tillman plays 32, 33 minutes. Aldama gets minutes. And Jaren Jackson plays center the other time. They're the only big. They use David Roddy in there, but there is literally no other center on that team. So we know the rotation. We saw it the last 2 games. And I don't really see that there's any. It varies, foul trouble, all that sort of stuff. Random stuff will happen, but this is it. We know what it is.
Yeah, you're right. It varies slightly depending on, as you said, fouls, matchups, that sort of thing. But we generally know what we're going to get. I streamed in Tillman last night and woke up, and I'm pretty happy now. So
pretty big W to go get that, because we thought we might get 2 or 3 games of these huge guaranteed minutes, and here we go. We've got like rest of the regular season, rest of the fantasy playoffs with big numbers. So this to stay on Memphis, Stock Twit says, will Dylan Brooks get a boost? All these guys out. He's low upside. I don't know. My waivers are barren, and the schedule is good. Kingy, your mate Dylan Brooks.
Yeah, look, he'll get a boost in terms of shot attempts. Mm-hmm. That's probably it. Look, I picked him up in a league, but all I need is points and threes.
That's all he's going to do, isn't it?
Percentages, I don't care about percentages at all. So yeah, look, he'll get a boost in terms of taking shots and missing shots, but that could end up in an extra 3 per game or something like that. Maybe you luck into a steal. That's what I'm hoping for, but I'm not convinced based on what we've seen this season.
Mo Bamba's regular season is over as well. He's out at least 4 weeks with a high ankle sprain. And there's a tweet here from Bobby Mark saying he's played a career low 11 and a half minutes since he was acquired at the trade deadline. I literally had people asking me questions. Man, he's going to play next to Anthony Davis. He's a must-add, yeah? The amount of dick riding for Mo Bamba is crazy. It happens so... I can't get over how much people just love that bloke, and I don't get it. Anyway, as for Dylan Brooks, this question... I don't even know if I need to talk about Bumba anymore, but this Dylan Brooks thing, and it's a larger point again. Steven Adams' injury impacts Dylan Brooks in no way whatsoever. Like, it just doesn't, because Steven Adams is not a high usage player. It doesn't change anything. Like, having Steven Adams out doesn't mean, all right, more for Dylan Brooks. It doesn't really change a single thing there. Ja Morant being out means Dylan Brooks goes, all right, it's my team now, boys. I'm going to take every shot in the world. That's the impact. And then he shoots 30% on 20 attempts. But people often get this idea, well, man, this center's out, there's more usage to go around. But when you see below average usage players leave a lineup, that just means that it doesn't mean that more usage goes. It means that they could actually be replaced by a high usage player. So there are fewer shots to go around. That doesn't always, I'm not saying Tillman probably is higher usage than Adams. I don't know that off the top of my head. But losing a player doesn't just mean that their shots, they don't start playing 4 on 5, is what I'm trying to say. Someone else gets in there and takes those opportunities away. Here's a question that I don't have the answer to, but it just brings us to a further point, Kingy. Louis Avia says, Joe Harris or Seth Curry tonight because the Nets are resting everybody.
Oh, toss a coin, really.
Exactly.
Who knows? It's, I don't know. I guess if I had to pick one, I might go Curry slightly, but...
I think Curry's because he's got more upside with assists.
Yeah.
But what you're going to have, and... I don't know whether they're going to start Cam Thomas or not. I think they'll probably start Edmund Sumner. But this could end up still being annoying because they could still run 5 guards. Curry, Harris, Sumner, Thomas, and watch them dust off Patty Mills. And this is not going to have value for their 3 games in 4 nights. It's for 1 game. And while, yes, Curry and Harris have been playing those minutes, the 21 or whatever it was last game they played each, I still think it could be a little bit messy, and it is really, like, there's no one who can sit here and tell you definitively one of these guys or the other. It's a coin toss. So good luck trying to decipher the Nets. Even their big men, like Sharp, Noel, Watanabe, I've got no idea what they're going to do at center. I think they'll probably run 3 blokes there, and it'll be completely frustrating, and we won't, it'll just be, well, I knew this, but no one did. And we don't really know which direction they're going to go. Noel got the backup minutes, but can he handle starters minutes? Probably not. Can Sharp handle them? Probably not. Can anybody? Probably not. I think it's going to be a disastrous rotation, and I cannot wait to break it down on my recap show today. Today's episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Life, whether you're a Nets rotation player or just in general, it can be tough to figure out what is going on, and BetterHelp is here to help you get better and attack life with more vigor and verve. Getting to know yourself can be a lifelong process, especially because we're always growing and changing. And therapy is all about deepening your self-awareness and understanding, because sometimes we don't know what we want or why we react the way we do until we talk things through. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who can take you on that journey of self-discovery from wherever you are. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, and it's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. You just choose the person that you want. You fill out some questionnaires, and they match you with the guy or the girl who they think is the best therapist for your particular situation. Very easy to do. And if it's not the person that clicks with you, you can just switch at any time for no additional charge. Discover your potential with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. Let's go back to the questions now. Kingy, all right. Stock tweet again. Go ahead.
Isaiah Stewart's out too for a month, so that's his season done.
All right.
Not that we really didn't assume that anyway, but... I
didn't really know what was going on with Stewart. That's like, okay, left shoulder impingement.
Yeah.
So immediately we're going to go, who's the ad? Like, we've seen what's happened, and we still don't know how Duren gets into it. So Duren, Wiseman, Bagley probably should all be on rosters. Livers probably moves into 14-team league stuff, but this is not out of the blue. Stewart hasn't played for a couple of weeks. Like, we know what this is. Stock Tweet has another question. Do you think it's fair to allow mathematically eliminated playoff teams to make pickups? No consolation prize or last place prize. I think there's no point. People seem to disagree. Kingy, We had someone asking a similar question to us yesterday on Twitter about teams that were out of the playoffs or out of playoff contention. I don't remember the exact scenario in that tweet about making waiver moves. What is your position on that?
Oh, look, I have a feeling you can't even do it on some platforms if you're not in the play. Well, if you're not in the that's if you're not in the playoffs.
But
not if you.
That's only a setting though. People have to set that. But yeah, that's only if once the playoffs started and you aren't in.
Yeah. So yeah, if it's not the playoffs, well, God, if it's not the playoffs yet, imagine how messy your playoffs are going to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, I mean, I think if a team can't make the playoffs, but they still want to go and add players, as long as they're not dropping like a Kawhi Leonard or they're not dropping a top tier guy who they wouldn't normally drop, if they're just trying to get their best lineup out there and trying to stream and win their matchup, then I'm okay with that. Like, I don't know. Like, it's tricky because we often complain about teams not setting their lineups and just giving up, and how does that impact things? This is sort of the reverse question, so I'm not sure there's a right or wrong answer, but I'm okay with people playing it out till the end.
That's a really important point that you bring up, because we complain about teams giving up and then giving easy victories to others, yet we're like, you shouldn't make moves. And I think I have absolutely zero debate for me. Like, once you're in the playoffs, once your playoffs have started and you didn't make it, you don't make moves.
No.
I finished 7th in a league with 6 teams. Playoff missed out by, I think it was head-to-head record, right? We had the same record, but that's fine. So I'm in the consolation round. I don't know why they still even have that. I'm not making a single move. I don't care about a consolation bracket at all. I'm not even setting a lineup in that. It doesn't mean a single thing. It means nothing for next season. There's no money involved. There's no draft picks involved. There's nothing. I'm not doing it. Like, it's just, I'm not going in there making waiver moves. And I people go, but what about, like, it just doesn't matter to me in that console. And that's why in any league that I run, there's no consolation bracket. It doesn't exist. There's no point to it. But the tricky thing is if you are mathematically eliminated from the playoffs, I think you do want those guys still setting lineups to make it a more fair experience for the other teams still battling. But I will say this, Kingy, that I think that those teams shouldn't be making trades. Waiver moves, sure. Trades, that's where it gets into a little bit of an iffy space. And I think that any trade from someone who's mathematically eliminated should be really eyes really cast onto it and go, I don't know what the point of this is. Waiver moves, no problem, right? You want to dick people over. You want to grab that guy. I understand that completely, and set your lineups and still be competitive, all of that stuff. But trades, I would not allow that.
Yeah. Well, I'm in a league which our playoffs started this week, and last week, in the last week of the season, I won. It's only 7 category, and I won 7-0 because the guy I'm against doesn't set his lineup. I actually didn't want to win 7-0 because I'm now playing a team that I don't. Well, we're very similar in our build, so it's going to be hard for me to win. And another workaround, I'm in a league, a 16-team league, where we have 16 teams in the playoffs. So
interesting. So the regular season is just about positioning then. Yep. And acquiring talent for the playoffs. That's interesting, because you can really be working on, like, it doesn't, we talk a lot about playoff scheduling, about, but you got to get there first. Well, in that league, you don't have to get there first. You just have to load up on guys who are going to be good in the playoffs. That's an interesting.
Yeah, and it just makes punting very interesting, because you can punt so hard and then just be strong in only 5 categories, which means you're not going to win. Like, you're not going to be top of the ladder. You might finish 12th. But it doesn't matter. You're built for the playoffs because you can beat everyone in 5 categories.
I just had a wild idea. It's stupid, and there's going to be massive holes in it. Imagine you played a league. Let's say it was 16 teams, right? But instead of the standard week-on-week matchup, that we run the season, let's say it's 20 weeks, but it's like, I play you for the first 4 weeks of the season, and if I lose, I'm out. It's just playoffs, but it's 4-week matchups. And then we just get all the way through. Like, I know your season could be over in 4 weeks, but we're just playing these 4-week chunk blocks. I feel like doing that is just like a piss take league, but very interesting, because then schedule discrepancies get somewhat eliminated playing over 4-week chunks. I don't even know why I thought of that, but anyway, that's that. Clement Coe says, can we trust Duren to play regularly from now on? Now, people ask these questions all the time. Can we trust him? I have no idea. We don't know. Like, we don't even know what the problem with the ankle is. We would hope that they would like to see more of Duren and Ivy together, who are literally their 2 best prospects still available to play this season. So I would think that they would want to, especially with Ivy's playmaking improving as it has, they'd want to see those two together as much as possible. But it's the Pistons. They make incorrect decisions every day that they wake up. So that is hard to know. Can we trust him? I would think that if he's healthy, then yes. I don't think he's going to be subject to random rests. We saw him sprain his ankle multiple times. This is not a fake injury situation. So trust, who knows? Will he play? I think that they will get him out there as much as they can.
Yeah, yep. Same for me, pretty much.
Nick K, just going back on a lot of this stuff we've talked about. Need to win field goal percentage this week. Do I drop Thibault or Dennis Smith to activate Duren?
Well, I mean, if you're only after field goal percentage, you could drop either of those guys.
Yep.
Potentially, I don't know. DSJ, I feel like he's going to give you more stuff. Like he'll still give you some assists. Steals. Thibault's really just steals at this point.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, and that's right. Smith gets you those assists and is a good shot blocker too.
So probably Thibault I'd drop there.
Tend to agree on that one, but it doesn't really matter when you're looking for field goal percentage. You know, Duren's is going to be a clear win there, and either of those two, it doesn't really matter that much. Daddy Hassan, is Brunson suiting up today? Thanks for the all caps. Love it. I got no idea, mate. We don't know. He's currently questionable, and we don't know. All right. Ariel Shields, are there any Hornets players that you would specifically not drop next week with a 2-game schedule? Now, obviously, LaMelo Ball is not one of those. So we're talking Oubre, we're talking Rozier, we're talking Washington, Hayward, Williams. Are there any of those players, Kingy, that you would specifically say, no, you have to hold this guy for a 2-game week?
It would depend a little bit on what stats, like how your build, your format, that sort of thing. Because I think Mark Williams, as we talked about earlier, is someone you could drop if you don't need blocks and rebounds. Because he's very heavily weighted towards only a couple of categories. Who wouldn't I drop? I don't know. Sadly, maybe Oubre, just because he's basically getting all the shots he wants. So I might hold him.
I'm looking at, well, if we look at next week just in general, because a lot of it is relativity as well. The Knicks, the Hornets, and the Jazz play 2 games. So there are 3 teams with 2-game weeks, but half of the league plays 4. It's not a situation where there's 10 teams playing 4 games, so it is a big discrepancy there. And when I look at my weekly projections, Mark Williams is actually my highest ranked Hornets player, and he's like 130th for next week. So, Rozier's 160th, and Hayward's 190th, and Oubre's 199th. But yeah, what you said is important, because if I'm punting field goal percentage, and Oubre probably jumps 70 spots, same with Rozier. I think, to me, the most reliable guy there is Rozier. And if I had to hold on to something, again, it's all in a vacuum, right? Like, we don't know what your team looks like. Rozier would be probably the one that I would consider holding on to. But given the way that the schedule plays out with other teams playing a lot of games, if you're in your finals week, like the 2 games there's no one that good that you have to hold through a 2-game week. If you're in a weekly league, you probably wouldn't start those players. And that means that if you can get extra games, like sometimes in one roster spot, you can turn that into 5 games played. And I believe next week, we don't have any high volume games at all. So you can maybe turn that into 6 games played out of that one roster spot, which is just too much to overcome with a 2-game player who, let's be honest, none of these guys are world-beating fantasy players. So I think that, to me, it's Rozier. It could be Oubre. It could be Williams. But in the end, I'm not going to look at any of those guys and go, yeah, no, you absolutely have to hold on to them under every situation. I don't think that's accurate at all. We'll get back to more questions in a second. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The end of the NBA season's coming. The playoffs are just around the corner, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, it's secure, and it's super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scorers or even three-pointers drained. Today's games, we've got that absolute blockbuster between the Hornets and the Pistons, Kingy. The Hornets are 4-point favorites on the road. How confident are you in Steve Clifford's boys getting the job done over Dwayne Casey's powerhouse Pistons?
Pretty confident.
Well, Yeah, I am the piss, Jesus Christ. Yeah, I'm pretty confident in it as well. But they're only 4-point favorites, so that's interesting. Plus, FanDuel also lets you combine your best bets or your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with the same game parlay. So don't miss your chance to get your no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Don't forget to gamble responsibly. Okay, let's get back to some more questions. Joseph Kim, do I think Wendell Carter Jr. will be shut down for the season? This ties back into stuff that we've talked about a lot, Kingy. Like, when a coach tells us something, it's very hard to just ignore it. When they say, is it anything serious? Are you expecting him back? Is it serious? No. We're expecting him back? Yes. I don't know what else we can do apart from go with that. Do I think that he's done for the season? If I said that, I'm just directly contradicting what we've been told. So no, I don't think he'll be done for the season. Do I think that he could come back and re-aggravate it and be done for the season? Sure. But again, when we get told something specifically, it's really hard to go out here and say, actually, the opposite is true. That's really hard to do.
Yeah, look, I think, if I had to guess based on what we've heard, as you said, I would say yes. I think he might come back. And I mean, if you look at the standings, Magic mathematically, they're not out of that play-in window there. So
they're miles away from that bottom four as well.
Yeah. So they're not getting one of those bottom three spots. So yeah, I don't know. I would think they probably will want to get him back out there.
Dr. Mario says in a points league he's holding Mark Williams. I think in a points league it's a worse spot to hold Mark Williams. If you're going to hold him, it's in category leagues, not in points leagues. But anyway, that's beyond the point there. A lot of questions about Cam Thomas. The value here is just bring it back to that question earlier on the Nets, Kingy, because I think this is important to know. Could Cam Thomas have a huge game today? Absolutely. Like, I think there's a huge chance of him going from 0 minutes last game to playing 30 minutes and scoring 30 points. I think that's distinctly possible. But it's also a situation where he might not play at all on Friday or might not play at all on Sunday on their next two games. So part of the reason for attacking the Nets is 3 games in 4 nights here. If you've got the ability to stream for one game, like Sharp, Noel, Sumner, Thomas are all big opportunities here. But I don't think this is the awakening of another Cam Thomas run. It might be one game. It might be 2. They might sit someone the next day. I don't think they will. So I think that needs to be brought up because I think a lot of people will look at Cam Thomas and they'll see a big game coming today and think that it's a long-term thing, and I'm not sure that that's the case.
No, and I think I'm just having a look now, but I have a feeling that the guys that are out, they're just resting, aren't they? Most of them.
Yes. Dinwiddie's definitely resting. Cam Johnson's got the knee issue, and it's a back-to-back. Claxton, I'm certain, is resting. Royce O'Neal, I'm certain, is resting. Like, it's all rest. There's no actual injury that I'm aware of for any of those players, and I'm pretty sure they'll all be back on Friday.
Yeah. So if that's the case, then have a look at what Cam Thomas has done the last week when they've had all those guys fit and healthy.
14 minutes in 3 games.
Yeah.
So Cam Thomas today, sure. I'm expecting good stuff. I'm expecting him to start. But after that, he might play 10 minutes combined. I've got no idea.
Yeah.
It is a tough one.
Yeah.
Will Keldon Johnson get shut down? No idea. Will he get injured? Maybe. Will he miss games? 100%. They're gonna sit a lot of guys down the stretch here. Young Sinatra, here's an interesting question. Is Zach Collins a drop? Now, Kingy, give us your initial take on that. I've got a lot to say on this one, amazingly.
Again, it's a bit dependent on what you need, league, where you are. Is he a drop? Look, I mean, he's a guy that I've never really targeted heavily. I mean, I think he's been getting minutes. He's had some good games. I prefer Bassie. The upside of him. So is he a drop? Yeah, if he was on my waivers, I wouldn't be sprinting really hard to run and grab him. So.
Here's why you're both wrong. Was Zach Collins a drop? Yes. They didn't play for 4 days. They didn't play Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. But why are you waiting until now to do it? Because they play Friday and Sunday. They got 2 games in 3 nights coming up. Like, this is the time that if you've held on this long, what are you waiting for? And why did you wait this long? And now's the worst time to drop him. And they play 4 games next week. Yes, there is a back-to-back in there. He might sit one of them. But over the next 11 days, the Spurs play 6 games or whatever. 10 days, they play 6 games. So your opportunity to drop Zach Collins was Sunday to open up a roster spot for 4 days. So while in theory, sure, You should have dropped him when he sat that game out on Sunday. Doing it now feels like a really bad move. I don't know why you would do it at this point. Like, you might not be a big fan of him. I am a decent-sized fan of him. But just in terms of balancing the schedule, doing it at this point doesn't make any sense to me. Why would you wait this long to do it? Now is the time that when someone did drop him, or Jones, or Sohan, or Johnson, that you grab him. Because you've got 2 games Friday, Sunday. Great to end the week. Not many teams have that. And then you've got a Tuesday, Wednesday back-to-back next week, which, again, they're probably going to sit blokes. But they've got 4 games next week as well, which is a boon to their schedule too. So that's important to note. Epic Brouhaha. Josh, do some Roto questions. Is Anthony Simons a hold in a Roto league? Well, I guess so, because in general, your bench in Roto serves as extended injured reserve, and you don't use it. So why wouldn't you hold him? Like, we don't have any information. We don't know when he's coming back. He's a good enough player that you can sacrifice one of those bench spots for him, because that is what the bench is for in Roto. A bench is an extended IR slot. Whenever I talk about injuries, and Roto bench is an extended IR. A weekly league bench is an extended IR. That's what they're there for. So, yeah, why wouldn't you hold him? You don't have to play him. Like, you just sit him on the bench. Pretty easy, I think.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I think so. Wasn't that a weird situation, the Anthony Simons thing?
So stupid. So absolutely. Because we look at grade 2 ankle sprain, right? That's 6 weeks. All right, no worries. Yeah. Here he is back in 2. I guess someone lied. Maybe they didn't, and they just completely misinterpreted the situation. He's re-injured 10 minutes into the game. Just, I don't know if it's incompetence. I don't know what it is. But we all raised our eyebrow and went, that feels early. And then, I don't know how many times that's happened this season, Kingy, where players have come back early and we've gone, it's probably a little bit early to come back from that injury, and then the same injury happens straight away, which is frustrating because it's predictable, and that is what ends up getting annoying. Kingy, I didn't realize the time. We're out of time here, which is great for you, because you need to go off and do your other job, and I need to go and do some other work. But thank you, everyone, for being a part of the show. Kingy, thank you to you, and tell people what you got going on. When's that new podcast of yours dropping?
So I did one with Zach Hanshu last week, and then I'm going to be reaching out to you and a couple other guys.
I'm blocking
today.
you.
You're blocking me.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll reach out to some other guys. Look, hopefully we'll be start recording some more in the next few days. I've just been flat out at work, which is unfortunate. And Matt Lawson and I will be starting up a Dynasty podcast in the next few weeks. I think once the playoffs sort of wrap up, we'll go down that path. So that'll be interesting, because I don't know a lot about Dynasty.
Matt's great at doing the Dynasty stuff, and getting Dynasty information is really important. I can't wait to see that and your other series of shows. Kingy, go follow Kingy and go listen out for those podcasts when he posts them. Thank you again for jumping on and answering questions with me.
No worries. My pleasure. I'll be back on again, hopefully before the end of the season.
I think we'll get you back on. Guys, follow this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and on the Odyssey app. And if you're on YouTube, you thumb it up and you leave those comments down below. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.